Good morning. Half the church is standing out front, but we will begin nonetheless. So, good morning and welcome to Common Thread Church, and of course, welcome to Mother's Day Sunday. How many, may I see a show of hand of how many people have been served Eggs Benedict and cappuccinos in bed this morning? That's what I thought. Yep. No. No, I did not. And a special welcome to all of our newcomers, whether you are here for the first time or you've been coming for a few weeks or a few months. If you are here, you belong. Because we are a church that seeks to find support and companionship around questions instead of answers in the spiritual life. You are our life's blood. You keep us practiced in the art of welcoming the stranger. So if you would like to receive our welcome email, please use the link or the QR code, and it will give you everything you need to make your way into our community. We are also a community that believes the spiritual journey requires mutual support and companionship. And if you could use some of that these days, please reach out. Or you can just find the library down the hall. Today, after the service, our listener is Sue. It is now Lena, who is not here yet, but I'm sure she will be by the time you need that mutual support. So, yes. I've seen people do it. It looks weird, but it works. Yes. So, yes, every week we have a listener who's been trained through the self-awareness process, and you can go on down to the library and find that person. Of course, you may also use the link or the QR code on the slide and reach out, and someone will be in contact with you. So again, welcome. We are so glad to be together. I was supposed to have assistants today to do the affirmation, but apparently something really fun is happening down in the children's rooms, so they bailed on me. But yes, so I don't know. I think Shelby's having them make paper flowers downstairs. So all by ourselves, let us affirm, as we do every week, the nature of our commitment to one another. If you are here, you belong. We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light. We are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath. And Lena just walked in, and I will wave at her. This is the listener who will be down at the library after the service if you would like to go down and receive some of that mutual support and companionship. So, as I said, I'm going to invite you to rise, greet one another, and pass the peace, but I would also like to invite you to wish a happy Mother's Day to all who mother. So we were thinking about this slide this week, and we were thinking of all the people in our lives, both our actual mothers as well as all of the people who've done mothering with us. Some of them were, in fact, our family. Some of them were not. Some of them were human, and some of them were not. If anyone's ever had an excellent dog or cat who licked you when you were needing to have some mothering, then you know what we're talking about. Yes, Jane. It is now. I taught grammar for 20 years, so I have the right to create verbs. So yeah, we want to invite you to think of all of the ways and the people who have mothered you during the course of your life, whether that was family, whether that was friends, whether that was people who show up in society wanting to offer this kind of warmth and nurturing that is maybe unique to mothering. And as we rise to greet one another and to pass the peace, to maybe share your own memories of how you've been mothered in your life, as well as your gratitude. Rise and greet.
Oops, wrong one. I don't need this one. What? I will. I got you. Are you using this today, or were you just using this as a prop? You'll bring it over and we'll swap them, okay? All right, teens. This is your time, teens. Go forth and prosper. Pixabay? Pixabay. Yeah, I'll send you a link. Well, good morning, friends. So today on Mother's Day, or Mothering Day, or as Kristen Rowe told me, Unmothering Day, I'm not doing any mothering today. I think she's got the right idea. But we're going to spend a little time with a new contemplative practice at Common Thread, and it's a forgiveness practice. So for many, if not most of us, forgiveness is hard. When someone wrongs us, we want justice. When we hurt others, it can be really hard to get past our defenses, to own our actions, to ask for forgiveness from those we have harmed and from ourselves. And we'll be hearing more about all this in just a little bit, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but forgiveness has little to do with justice or just letting one who engages in bad behavior off the hook. It's about release. It's an act of the heart. A movement to let go of the pain we carry when an offense takes root inside us, causing bitterness or a sense of burden within. Easier said than done, right? Now, it is possible for forgiveness to be offered with ease, but more often than not, genuine forgiveness is a process, one that we can develop through a regular practice, which I would invite us to enter into now, a practice of forgiveness adapted from Jack Kornfield, who you may or may not be familiar with. He's a Buddhist meditation practitioner. He's been pretty instrumental as a pioneer in bringing Eastern spiritual practice to our Western culture. So, what I would like to invite you to do is find a comfortable place in your body. Just allow your eyes to close and your breath to be natural and ease-filled. Take a few deep breaths. Breathe in deeply. You may remember last week we did a practice in breathing, and just breathe in, fill your lungs, and then exhale as fully as you possibly can. Let's go ahead and do that a few more times. Breathe in. And exhale fully. Breathe in. And out. See if you can maintain a steady, ease-filled pace of breathing throughout this practice as your body and your mind relax. As you breathe gently now, focus your attention on the area of your heart. See if you can let yourself feel all the barriers you have erected and the emotions that you have carried because you have not been able to forgive. Not able to forgive others, not able to forgive yourself. Let yourself feel the pain of keeping your heart closed. And then breathing softly, begin asking and extending forgiveness. Let the images and feelings that come up grow deeper as you sink into this practice, where I will invite you to consider 3 contexts in which you can ask for and extend forgiveness. First, asking forgiveness for those you have harmed, as I do the same. Followed by forgiving ourselves, and then forgiving others who have harmed us. First, I am aware that there are many ways that I have hurt and harmed others, have betrayed or abandoned them, have caused them suffering, knowingly or unknowingly. And this has come out of my own pain, fear, anger, or confusion. I try to bring to mind now just one particular time in which I have caused hurt and harmed another, allowing myself to see and feel the pain I have caused emerging from my own fear or confusion. I allow myself to feel my own sorrow and regret. I see if I can get in touch with that which still burdens my heart. And now I try to sense whether I can finally release this burden and ask for forgiveness. If I can, bringing to mind and holding in my heart this person I have harmed, I ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your forgiveness. Second, I am aware that there are many ways in which I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed or abandoned myself many times through thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly. I allow myself to feel my body, to sense my own breath, and to see if I can bring to mind just one way in which I have hurt or harmed myself. I picture this, I remember this. I feel the sorrow I have carried from this, and I try to sense whether I am ready now to release this burden. If I am ready, I extend forgiveness for this way in which I have hurt myself through action or inaction, out of fear, pain, or confusion. I extend a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. And third, I am aware that there are many ways in which I have been harmed by others, abused or abandoned, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. I bring to mind now just one time, one incident in which someone has hurt or harmed me. I allow myself to feel the sorrow I have carried from this incident, to sense where the pain has taken residence in my body, and see if I can find it within myself to release this burden of pain by extending forgiveness when my heart is ready. I know that I have carried this pain in my heart too long. To the extent that I am ready, I offer them forgiveness. To those who have caused me harm, I offer my forgiveness. I forgive you. Forgiveness is the fruit of a softening of a hardness of heart. And I am aware that I may need to sink into this meditation many times until I feel an authentic release in my heart. It will take all the time it will take, and I will be gentle with myself, allowing the softening to work in me. If my pain is great, I may not yet feel any release. But perhaps I will become more in touch with the burden and the anguish or anger I have held on to. I touch whatever I am still holding softly, and I try to be forgiving of myself for not being ready to let go and move on. And as I make this practice a regular part of my life, in time, I have hope and faith that in a spirit of surrender and letting go of what binds me, my heart will become ever more supple and open to each new moment of my life with a wise and loving kindness. And now as we gently open our eyes and come back to presence, sitting here together in community with hearts that have perhaps been softened just a bit through this practice, I'd like to extend an invitation to call to mind what is on your heart this morning, so that we all might hold in our collective heart what you are holding in yours. And if you want to hold this silently in your heart, hold it there, and know that we all hold it with you in love. Whether this is something painful in your life or joyful, whether it's a burden made harder by a lack of forgiveness in some way, or an opening to new life because forgiveness was possible. Whether it's an appreciation for someone who has mothered you, or a sense of loss for the mothering you have lacked. Whatever it might be, let's all hold all of this together. And if you want to share this out loud, to bring awareness to all of us what it is we are holding for you, just raise your hand and I and or Cherie will bring a mic to you. That's true, you do.
As we were doing the meditation, there we go. As we were doing the meditation, immediately came to mind the guy that used to be my assistant when I was in California, who kind of developed a version of resentment for me that culminated in getting me excommunicated and getting us kicked out of our denomination. And I did not feel acrimony toward him. I just shut him out of my life. I blocked every contact that he had. As we were doing the meditation, it occurred to me, I also hardened my heart. And then I needed to soften that. And even in this small exercise, my heart is softer.
Thank you.
I used to be a OBGYN doctor, and I was in private practice. And I, as a doctor, you rely on people to trade call with. And I was in a small hospital with about 10 of us, And there were two big call groups, and I was excluded from both of them. And so I had no one to trade call with. And I struggled with forgiving these jerks for excluding me from their call group, both of them. And what I struggled with is, do you forgive people who are getting ready to screw you again next week? You're in this years-long relationship where you've got this big investment, and you know these guys are going to screw you again next week. Do you forgive them today for what they did last week when they have every sign of doing it again next week? And I still don't know that I have the answer to that question.
What came to mind for me was just self-forgiveness and finding ways to forgive myself for ways I have harmed myself.
And talking about Mother's Day, that's probably been one of the hardest days of the year for me. The relationship that I had with my mother was tumultuous, to say the least. She died when she was 50 and I was 22. So I've not had a mother for many years now. But the resentment that I had towards my mother was one that was, it's hard to describe. It was very intense, based on all the years of controlling and things that went on between us. And it wasn't until I went through, self-awareness practices of first identifying what was the cause of all of this. I knew I was angry at my mother, but why? And someone encouraged me to do that in 19 words or less. And I thought, that's impossible. How can I put down all of the things that she's done to me in 19 words or less, to stay out of the story and just focus on the facts? And doing that prayerfully, what came to me was she didn't love me the way that I wanted her to love me. It was very simple. And then I looked at, what was my part in all of that? Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I to blame? And I was able to turn that around and to not only see her as a sick person, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of compassion, and then to also look at my own defects so that I could work on those. And so I have been free of that resentment, which has been one of the greatest gifts. So I'm able to celebrate Mother's Day with a different attitude now.
Indwelling divine, may all these intentions we hold in our hearts be held together in our collective heart, in our oneness as a community, bearing each other up in love. Amen.
Good morning. That was actually a very helpful meditation. Thank you, Sue. I did not, she texted me yesterday and said, well, given that you changed up the whole lesson and you're doing something different, how about if I do a forgiveness meditation? And I said, I know a lot about forgiveness. I know a lot about meditation. I don't know much about a forgiveness meditation. Let's see. Stuff that's coming up this week, ways you could connect in the community. What are you thinking on Zoom today? One-week internal assembly, I'll talk about that in a second. Next Sunday, drop-in Enneagram group right after church. The 21st, hear about this in a second also, Wake County's budget hearing. Then 26th, centering prayer, snack and chat, brew crew, all of these things coming up. A lot is going on at One Wake right now. We are focused a lot in our community on making a very large set of transitions, turning a lot of things that we have learned into systems that can be transmitted to another generation of leadership. That's meant that we had to back off on some of our commitments in other areas, and one of the areas that we backed off on is particularly me kind of helping us keep engaged with One Wake, which I feel a little bit bad about, because there are few ways of making a difference in our community that are more effective than One Wake. Doing something, not nothing, changing systems that cause harm, working on the big national, global issues, but doing it in a very here, now, small, doable, right here in our town way. Few organizations, few groups working together are as effective as One Wake. So I hope you will go to the Internal Assembly. It's coming up on the 16th. And I hope there you will find out about what's going on, why we would want to show up at this budget hearing. It has a lot to do with how we're going to be working on homelessness and how we're going to be working on mental health here in our county. A couple of things that we can be working on being first aid for mental health incidents, also in providing a non-armed response to mental health episodes when they happen. So there's a lot going on. I really do hope you'll go. It just can't be a big focus for us right now. 3 places to find out all the stuff I just buzzed through. You can always open up our Thursday email. You can go check on the app, or you can go to the front page of the website. I grew up in a church that practiced tithing, and that was giving 10% of our income to charitable causes, including our church community. So for 50 years, I have practiced tithing on every paycheck I have made, haven't missed one. You are not unaware that I have deconstructed a lot of my religion. You are not unaware that I have discarded many of the unhelpful parts of religion, and yet I have not discarded that. When I didn't believe any of this shit anymore, I still kept practicing the tithe. So all the stories that I have discarded along the way, many of those stories have to do with the tithe. I have discarded the stories that I was told about a debt that I owed to God. I've discarded the stories about this is a way to get God to bless you. You give, and then God will give back to you. Now, the thing is, there's something in those truths. There's some truth in those stories. We do have obligations to one another. Mutuality is part of the human condition. Generosity does open us to a bigger world. It's not that there's no truth in those stories. They just have not been big enough truths. But here is why I have kept the practice. Because it has profoundly, in my life, dismantled fear. For years and years and years, the practice has dismantled fear. The consistent practice, every dollar, every month, it has been for me the primary way that my deeper self has challenged my lizard brain self. My lizard brain self would like to control, and the primary narrative of my lizard brain is, there will not be enough. Be afraid, be very afraid. And so that drive to clutch that is such a part of our human experience, the drive to not be open-handed or open-hearted because of fear, that has been the primary thing I have noticed the practice has dismantled inside of me, that tightening constraint. Now, the lizard instincts are in us for a very good reason. We do want to manage for our bills, and we do want to set aside for the future. Those things are true. They're just not the biggest truth. So this ancient practice has helped me dismantle my not enough byproduct instincts, my not being present in the moment because I'm overly concerned about that, not having peace byproduct instincts. Now, there have been times in my life, many of them, especially when I was younger, oh my God, how are we going to make it through this? But what the practice did, even in the, oh my God, how are we going to make it through this times, was challenge the limits that my brain would put upon me, challenge the constraints that I would be driven by. So every time I came out the other side and didn't end up living under a bridge in a box, I could stand outside of those constraining, fearful instincts and I could see them. and I could name them, and I could then judge them and decide on them, and I could opt in or I could opt out, free of fear and worry and clutching and grabbing and limiting. So I have practiced this consistency of percentage-based giving because it has been a transforming spiritual practice. I've got a bunch of stories about it, but the bottom line of those stories is I do not feel in my life dominated by fear around having enough resources. We've got some big decisions to make financially as a community. I can look at the numbers and I can say, well, if we do this, we're going to have to do that. That's going to happen. This is going to be painful if we do this. But here's what I come to it. I come to it with a heart not constrained, because that part has been dealt with through the practice. So, change from my heart. And along the way, the dollars that I have given in my life have done some very special things. I got to see where those dollars went. So I hope you'll take an ownership stake in the community, yes, but I also hope you can experience the freedom of the spiritual practice of generosity. All right, before I start the lesson, I just wanted to say this, because through the years, Mother's Day has been a tricky one for me, because parenting is such an important role in our world, plays such an important role in our future, and it is so thankless. It is so routine and so mundane and can be so challenging, and we always think we're doing it wrong. And so we want to recognize parenting, and we want to encourage parenting, our mothers and our fathers. And through the years, I have felt, along with people that I love dearly, the pain that the day causes. Because on Mother's Day, on Father's Day, there is an annual reminder that life has not worked out the way that they had wanted. Many that I've known dearly have wanted children, and life didn't go that way. Others did have children, and life became very painful through that process. So a day focused on the role became for them a very painful day for some people very dear to me. So then it's a tricky day. So I honor you today, filling an important and often challenging role. And I would love to stand with you today if the day pokes a hurt and pokes a pain and pokes a disappointment. So indwelling divine, we, in both contexts, may we stand before love and light. Amen. If you know anything about Jesus' teaching, you know that his concept of giving and receiving is kind of central. Give and you will be given unto. Love and you will be loved. And especially give generously of the things that people often limit, like mercy, like grace, like forgiveness. Kindness to adversaries is often in short supply. Be gracious. So variations on that theme, variations on the theme of reciprocity, goes like this. If you don't judge, you are not yourself going to be judged. If you don't condemn, you're going to find that you yourself will not be condemned. If you do forgive, you're going to find that you yourself will experience being forgiven. It's one of the ways that life works. It is this cycle of reciprocity. And somebody has to start the cycle. So Jesus taught, let it be us. Forgive because the world needs forgiveness, but along the way, so will you. Be merciful and be gracious because the world needs grace and mercy, but along the way, so will you. So be gracious and be merciful, or you will live in a world that is lacking in grace and mercy. Be forgiving to those who are difficult to forgive, or you will live in a world that is lacking in forgiveness. And in the intervening years, every generation has rediscovered and then rediscovered again this counterintuitive concept. It's counterintuitive because our evolution brains don't tend to go there. We survived our ancient past in tribes who had to make their own law and their own order and their own justice. And one of the primary ways that those tribes did so was by striking back hard when they had been harmed and doing it as a deterrent. If we strike back hard enough, when people attack, word will get out and people won't strike us again. And so we carry around those instincts in us, deeply embedded. And Jesus' idea of reciprocity and the cycle starting with us goes kind of cross-grained to those interior visceral instincts. Consequently, bring up this notion, and it always raises objections. It even brought up an objections with one of Jesus' own guys, Peter. Jesus, that's not how the world works. Forgive who? Forgive how often? What are you talking about? All those pretty stories, Jesus, all those pretty stories about grace for tax collectors, mercy for prostitutes and lepers, Pharisees who come in the night, forgiving people 70 times 7. Seriously, Jesus, it's just foolishness. It's not the way the world works. And yet again, generation after generation, we rediscover the wisdom. Generation after generation, we rediscover the need to push against our own brain instincts, because if we don't, we kill one another. Grace and mercy and forgiveness. For all of our objections, good objections, by the way, we come back again and again and again through history and rediscover that we are either going to practice them, we're going to practice grace, mercy, and forgiveness, or we're going to live in a world that is lacking in grace, mercy, and forgiveness. Now, all of that said, the title today, Jesus and the Jackasses. The word jackass is just a little bit trivial. I chose it for fun. I chose it because it went out on the email. But yeah, it's a little bit trivial. Maybe not in your family, but in my family, the term jackass was a term of endearment. It was a loving way to tell my kids, yeah, don't do that. But start talking about grace and start talking about mercy or forgiveness, start talking about this cycle of reciprocity and endearing people doing knucklehead things. That is not the problem. That problem we worked on in the last stage of this lesson when we talked about being more intentional in our friendship. That's where you talk about endearing people doing knucklehead things. But in this context, we talk about something very different. I asked Scott if I could tell his story this morning. Last week, we had a funeral for his daughter, Rebecca, who died of a drug overdose. And in the service, we tried to remember the totality of her life, both the pain and the heartache that attends drug addiction, but also the beauty and the goodness that was also her life and her story. And on that Friday, attending the funeral were several people who had been key players in getting Rebecca addicted. People who had actually preyed upon her vulnerabilities and used her inner hurts to exploit her for their personal gain, and had done so at the expense of her dignity and her humanity, and in the end, even her life. There were people in the room Friday who, in the most degrading ways possible, had robbed her of her life and trapped her in a life of self-hatred and darkness. There were people in that room who stole from Scott his deepest desire to protect Rebecca, his deepest desire to safeguard her, as fathers feel, to defend her and to care for her. And they were in the room. This room. And at a poignant moment during the service, Scott hugged one of those people. In another moment, as people were filing out greeting Scott, he treated with kindness and grace those who had harmed her. Consequently, those who know Scott and who know the story and who know the players asked, what are you doing? How are you doing it? How do you hug? How are you gracious? What are you doing? That's not jackass territory. That's as hard as it gets territory. So I also asked that question. How are you doing it? And he told me. Well, I didn't do it Friday. I did it for 10 years before Friday. I especially did it when Rebecca gave birth to my grandson, because I knew if I hold on to my resentment, if I feed my bitterness, if I feed my hatred, my grandson will suffer the consequences. He will live in a world without grace. He will live in a world without mercy, without forgiveness. He will suffer. Now, I know, as you do too, it really does feel that holding on to bitterness is natural. It does feel that holding on to bitterness is right, is good. But Scott has read what Jesus had to say about this, and Scott has heard the wisdom that it's been rediscovered generation after generation. So sure, it feels good, but it is not good. Not for me, not for the people I impact, not for the world that I get to help create every day. Bitterness and not mercy and not forgiveness are poisons that once they are in us will fester. And as they do, those I love will suffer the consequences of that festering within me. If I feed my bitterness, if I keep it healthy and I keep it strong, all it does to me, all it does to the people that have done the harm, is add fuel to the fire to keep that cycle of pain going if we don't break the cycle. Without the cycle being broken, the exploiters will just exploit more. The harmers will just harm more. And Scott told me, I saw that 10 years ago. Holding on to that bitterness wouldn't be good for anyone in the system. So I started working on it all that time ago. Grace, mercy, forgiveness. Those were not things Scott did Friday. Those were things that emerged inside of Scott that he had been working on for 10 years. Now, you have heard me describe the spiritual journey this way. We keep working the circle, and the day comes when we don't do virtue anymore, but we have become virtue. We don't do kindness. We don't do courage. We don't do justice. That's where we start. It's always where we start. We start with the doing. But eventually, what the journey does is enact something inside of us where we become kindness, and we become courage, and we become justice. And that has happened to Scott, and that has happened to many of us. It's how we become the people the world needs us to be. And that somewhat endearing term, jackass, is not strong enough to cover that. Not strong enough to cover someone destroying the life of a father's daughter. But the things that we can do, that if we will do, will make it possible to do things we cannot yet do. Those things are strong enough, and they will change us, and they will make possible mercy and grace and forgiveness. They will make it possible to break the cycles, even for those who destroy a father's daughter. That's what this year of intermittent lessons is about. Us doing the things that if we will do, will make us, over time, those people. So here's a quick recap of the year-long lesson, a series of stages we go through, drawing from Jesus' well-known, I heard it. Drawn from Jesus' well-known Sermon on the Mountainside. Number one, stage one, love yourself. We saw how meditation is an important part of that. 2, becoming better friends, love your neighbor, becoming more intentional, befriending those who are already dear to us, working the practices with purpose and intention in those areas that are close to us with friends and family, which makes our friendships stronger. Yes, that's great, but it also remaps our neurons in our brains, makes us different people. Practice grace and mercy and forgiveness with those close to us, and it changes us. And today, the third one, if we are intentional with our friendships, it will expand us, and it will expand us enough to one day be able to see the possibility that there are things that I could do that if I did do would make it possible for me to do what I cannot yet do. And I could do it with my venomous brother-in-law, and I could do it with that malignant sister, or I could do it with the people who have destroyed my daughter's life. If we expand in the circles that we can, the day comes when we could see things that if I were to do those things, maybe I could become the person this moment in history needs. And so this lesson for a few weeks will be about those things. What are they? And today, just one of them, an important one. But before we get to that one thing that we can do, under the heading, forewarned is forearmed, let's even factor in the objections that our very normal minds will inevitably throw up. Objections that will keep us from even considering, even trying. Most of the objections are rooted around the theme that we heard today. I've so much appreciated what John shared. If I am gracious and kind to this person who has harmed me, they'll be back tomorrow to do it again. Grace makes me vulnerable all over again, and that's just nonsense. So let's start with the objections. And one of the big ones, and I think perhaps one of the best objections, is this. Even after we see this objection, though, even after I name it, even after we talk through it and see it from a bunch of different angles, here's going to be a truth that remains. If we don't practice grace, if we don't practice mercy, if we don't practice forgiveness, we will live in a world that is lacking in grace and mercy and forgiveness. So, to my mind, here's, I think, our most powerful objection. It hurts. It hurts so badly. It hurts so badly that all I can register is pain. It hurts so badly that all I can feel is anger in response to my pain. Thank you for this grand and noble idea of being the people that the world needs us to be, but I can't. Not now. Not me. This is all I've got. All I've got is pain. All I have is anger. Now, the reason I think that is perhaps our best objection is my own experience being there. You might have been there as well. There are times when that is all we can do. All we can do is feel our pain and feel our reactions to our pain. So I would like us to hear together what grace is not, what mercy is not, and what forgiveness is not. It is not, if you were a good person, you would do this thing. It is not that. That's not what grace is. That's not what mercy is. That's not what forgiveness is. What it is a very small first step on a very long journey. I asked Scott if I could tell his story this morning because 10 years. 10 years. When all we can access is our pain, when all we can access is our pain, and that is all, a lesson on mercy and a lesson on forgiveness is not a lesson on should. You cannot be where you cannot be. You should do is no help when you can't do. It's just not that way. That's not how this works. But here's what it is. Thank you, Jesus, for the good words, but I can't do it. But here's where the step comes. I can't do it today. Not today. But today is not the end of the story. Hurt badly enough, we can't even muster want. We can't even muster, I want to grow into something noble. We can't. We can't even want grace, can't even desire mercy. We can't even think it's a good idea to go to a place where we could forgive. But here's what maybe we can do on the days when it just hurts too badly. We can commit to not feeding our anger. Maybe we can do that. We can commit ourselves to not feed our resentment, which is relatively simple given everything that we've talked about, how the spiritual journey goes, which means we can just keep working the circle. We can get back into the rhythm of our lives even after we take some of life's biggest hits, and we can continue to practice meditation. And we can continue to practice spiritual friendship. We can continue practicing self-care. We can continue on the spiritual journey, following the spiritual life, because here's the thing, the intensity of our pain will diminish over time if we don't feed it. The intensity of our anger will diminish over time if we don't commit ourselves to feeding it. That's a thing that we can do. We can register our pain. That's a thing that we can do that if we will do, will change things. We can keep working the circle. We can keep being spiritual friends, and we can keep drawing from our spiritual friends. We can keep practicing the quieting of the noise of our ego reactions. We can keep learning. We can keep trying to understand from different perspectives, from different vantage points. We can keep serving something bigger than ourselves, things that we can do over time that do not commit us to feeding our resentments. We can do that. And if we do, things will become possible tomorrow that are not possible today. I can't go there, Jesus. I can't even want to go there, Jesus. It just hurts too badly. That's okay. Don't go there today. Today, nurture your soul. Today, don't nurture your resentment. Don't work so hard to hold on to your anger, and then when it quiets for a bit, work hard to hold on to it again because that's what they deserve. Hold on to it again because that's what's right and just. Don't hold on to it again because that's the way the world is going to change, because it's not. Don't work so hard to hold on to resentment. We allow ourselves to hurt. We allow ourselves to rail in our anger. We allow ourselves to grieve and feel our sorrow. But if we do that, and if we allow ourselves to, the anger will start to subside. Slowly, but it will. And when it does, if we don't work hard to gin it up again because of all those things that are right and good and supposed to be, if we don't work so hard to gin it up again, the readiness begins to emerge to see something we couldn't see. Sometimes we see something about other people's motivations that when we were so hurt, we couldn't see. Sometimes we see things about other people's experiences and other people's perspectives, something about our own boundaries. Maybe we set them too far out. Maybe we set them too far in. Something that we see that we hadn't seen before when readiness begins to emerge. Perhaps we become ready to learn something more or see something that we hadn't seen. We don't make those things happen. Those things happen. What we do is work hard to remove the things that keep those things from happening. All we have to do is not commit to nurturing our resentments. We have to not do that. Readiness will emerge. Openness will unfold. We will be able to feel feelings we can't yet feel. When we are consumed with anger, that eclipses everything. But that will subside, and there is other emotional and cognitive experience to be had. Maybe what emerges is empathy. You can't see that when you're worked up. Maybe what emerges is an authentic experience of compassion. Maybe what emerges is a glimpse of a settled place of peace. You can't see those things. You can't feel those things when you are in the throes of your pain. But if you don't nurture that anger, those things do emerge because they are also in there. We don't make it happen, but it does happen. And it just happens when it happens. Might be 10 years. All we do is commit to not nurturing our resentments. And what emerges is born of the light that we all carry. And maybe the best thing that we can do, we do before the big, egregious, terrible, awful thing happens. And for many of us, that day is today. Today, we are not in the throes of a great, big, egregious, terrible, awful thing. So the best thing that we can do is practice mercy today. Practice forgiveness today when it's not that hard, before life takes an altering turn, a turn that changes everything. Today we can build into our souls and build into our brains and build into our practices a way of grace before we are sorely tested, before someone destroys our daughter's life. And we can do that with our friends. We can do that with our families. We can become more intentional friends, practiced in the art of grace, practiced in the art of mercy, practiced in the art of forgiveness. So in Dwelling Divine, may we be becoming together the people our world needs us to be. Amen. Well, those of you who are online, we're about to dismiss you. When we do that, we're going to open the floor, and I'm going to ask people what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And we would like to invite you to a similar experience. It's a little different, but it happens, yep, there it is, on Zoom. There in the YouTube notes, you will see two links. One link will take you to that Zoom where you'll be introduced to somebody who's leading it. I think Cindy is leading it today. She's very gracious. She will invite you in, introduce you to everybody, and then you'll get to have the same kind of discussion we're having here. But there's another link because we know that a lot of you are watching at another time, not on Sundays, so this isn't live for you. And if that's the case, the other link says, I'm interested in online community. And then we'll send you some information where you can get connected to people in an online way who are kind of working the circle the way that we are doing that together. We would love to include you in that. So if you would, let's join together and dismiss the folks online. If you would, put your hand on your heart and remember as we go that we are, every one of us, carriers of the indwelling divine. There is within us love and joy, peace, kindness, goodness, because the inner light is in each of us. And if you would extend your other hand to our city, let's look for opportunities this week to share what's already in us, the kindness, goodness, compassion that is in us with the people that we live and work and go to school with, looking for opportunities to repair and heal our worlds. Amen. God bless you all online. You are dismissed. Those of you in the room, tell me about what goes on.